Brian Parham here with the Rock Dojo, and I'm so excited to interview one of my favorite guitarists and one of my musical mentors, Dave Celentano. Dave, such a pleasure.
Hey,
Thank you so
thanks.
much for coming.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks for having me here. I've been part of your Rock Dojo. Answer some questions for you today.
Awesome. So we were just speaking before I hit the record button, and you were going to play a little something, which I would love to hear, and I'm sure the viewers would love to hear you play.
All right, let me see if I can knock this thing out. It's pretty short. It's a little tapping thing. This is, how does that sound? Can you hear that okay?
Sounds great. Maybe a little bit louder.
Okay. How's that sound? All right, so this is my little thing I wrote, an etude, little tapping exercise. If Eddie Van Halen were to take his tapping section of Eruption and combine it with Paganini's 24th Caprice, this is what it would sound like. Okay, let's see if I can knock this out in one shot. Ta-da!
Bravo. Man, that was amazing. Dave, I miss hearing you play. So I just want to give a little bit of background. When COVID hit, I started taking lessons with Dave Celentano. I studied with Dave for about a year, and it was one of the best musical experiences of my life. And you're a true master of the guitar, as everyone can see. So
Thanks,
first question, Dave, how did you get started in music?
Well, it was rock music, the band Kiss, of course. You know, when I was younger, before I had a guitar, I'd make a cardboard cutout of a guitar and pretend I was playing along with them. But then my mom and dad got me an electric for Christmas one year when I was like 12, 13. The music, I think in 8th grade, they offered a guitar in one of the classes, so I took that. And then from that, I got into Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. And then when Van Halen hit, it's like that just took me to the next level of inspiration because Eddie's playing was so much different. And to me personally, maybe not everyone else, but so far above the guys, you know, Tony Iommi and Sabbath, as great as he is and Sabbath is. And Jimmy Page, you know, has got his style that's awesome too. And Ace Frehley and Kiss. But Ed's playing was so new and revolutionary and different. It just transcended everything. And it inspired me to start really working hard at it. And from that point on, at my high school I went to, Marty Friedman, the former lead guitarist with Megadeth. I think it was Megadeth for 10 or 15 years or so. But he actually was in 12th grade when I was in 10th grade. And he was a great player back then. And I heard from friends that he was offering, you know, he did little lessons out of his house, you know, when his parents' house. So I befriended him a little bit while we were in high school, took a few lessons from him, and he got me into playing lead guitar and showing me, you know, how to do some really cool stuff. And from that, I heard he would practice, you know, he would tell me he would practice like 2-3 hours a day at least, if not more. And back then I was only doing half hour a day to an hour. So I instantly said, well, sheesh, if he's that good and I'm only doing this, I need to ramp up practicing if I want to quickly get to that next level. So I started doing like 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, and then started playing with bands. You know, we'd play at our high school, a couple gigs. And then once I graduated high school, old enough to play in clubs. This is before the drinking age went up to 21. We could play clubs when I was 18. So we would play some clubs in different bands. And then I basically did 4 hours a day of guitar every day, no breaks, for about 10 years. And I kept track of it. Now I don't do that. I don't have time to spend 4 hours a day practicing because of my work schedule, but I do about an hour and a half a day of just me time, not including work for guitar tricks or work for private lessons and things like that. Um, yeah, so let me just kind of look down. I answered all your questions here. Let me just make sure I'm covering everything. I think I got all that.
Oh, Dave, it was fantastic. I actually want to ask you a question about, you mentioned that you were started playing when you were 12 years old. You got a guitar for Christmas and you had a class when you were in 8th grade. So one of my questions I want to know is, what's the first riff that you learned or the first song that you learned on guitar?
It's just the silly ones like Smoke on the Water. But I remember in the guitar class, one of the guys was, there was two riffs that I thought were really cool back then. The first one was, play that funky music.
Okay, I didn't recognize. Got you. Yeah.
Or the if I clean up the guitar tone a little bit, you'll hear it. Play that funky music. And then, of course, the Walk This Way Aerosmith lick. Those are just two, back in the day, those were like the first ones I learned. Those were more challenging than.
Wow, those are classic riffs, man. And yeah, it's funny because I haven't done Play That Funky Music, White Boy, but I definitely done the other two. Super, super cool. And thanks so much for playing those, Dave. Yeah. So my next question for you is, well, I interview a lot of different types of musicians on this Why Does Music Matter podcast or blog. And yeah. So what do you, I know that you play guitar, obviously, but do you play any other instruments, and how has playing guitar shaped your life?
I teach bass a little bit. I don't have currently any bass students, but I teach, like I see you got a bass hanging there. So if you can play guitar, you can play bass. It's the same geometry and same tuning minus the high E and the B string. So I do that when I have a student that wants to do bass. I've done ukulele, and again, it's the same geometry as the guitar, but just pretend there's a capo on the 5th fret and no low E or A, and then you got your ukulele layout. It's, if you know your notes on the fretboard and your shapes, it's the same geometrical chord shapes. So, but mostly it's guitar, guitar for more, like right now, I don't have any ukulele students, but man, a couple of years ago, it seemed like ukulele was taking off before COVID hit. And I did have a few students at that point, but that's kind of, once COVID hit, that kind of diminished pretty quickly, went down the pipes.
Is there any lessons that you learned through your journey as a musician and like that positively affected your life?
Being patient and then trying to adjust things, because not every student's going to want to learn what I like. And I see that with some other teachers. They're great players and well qualified. I don't have my degree. I went to Musicians Institute. Actually, back in '86 when I went, it was called GIT, Guitar Institute of Technology in Hollywood, here in Los Angeles. But they've since been bought out and changed the name to Musicians Institute and broadened they not just do guitar, they do bass, drums, vocal, keyboards too. But I got my certificate from there. It's like a 1-year course. But I've, some of my friends and other teachers I've, shared rooms with at music stores, have their bachelor's degree in music or their master's degree, and they're phenomenal players and they're really good at jazz. Even though I'm not too good at it, I'm still intrigued by the style, and I am working on some jazz stuff. But my forte is rock and blues, and I love the classical, and especially doing the classical with a neoclassical vibe, like giving it the rock sound, like on my new album. But so how has it shaped me and helped me learn? Well, of course, the patience thing, because every student's going to learn at a different rate, and most of them don't learn as quickly as I would like. So that's where the patience comes in. right? But also too, it's like I don't want to force them. If I quickly ask students what they're into when they start, what are your objectives? Do you like blues? Do you like acoustic guitar? You finger picker? You want to do folk? Like some of my students have acoustics and they like to finger pick and play Bob Dylan songs and Neil Young stuff, acoustic stuff that's kind of mellow. So they're not into the heavy metal stuff. So I'm not going to have them do Metallica, for instance, even though I love that stuff. And I got people on the other side of the fence that really like the harder stuff, the tapping, and they don't want to do blues. So I don't have them do the blues. So you got to kind of find what the student wants and feed them that. What I was getting at, though, back to the teachers that are well qualified, sometimes they'll just show the students all that they know about jazz, even though the student might not even like jazz. But the teachers, I've heard some of them, they just start them off with that stuff, like doing 2-5-1s. It's like, how is that? If the kid wants to play rock and roll, that doesn't relate to me. So I try to give students things that are hands-on immediately. They can like start sounding good.
Well, I can attest as your student, you're a phenomenal instructor. And I think everybody should study with Dave Celentano. And also, Dave's not telling you, he is a master at classical, at mixing the classical and rock. I haven't seen anybody who can do it at the level that you do it. And your new album, I'm sure I'll screw up the title, but is Earth. Tell me the title. I don't want to screw it up.
Earth, Victory, and Heaven. And I was finishing it up right when Eddie Van Halen passed away, and he just weighed that when that happened, it was just weighed heavy on my heart, like severely. And I wanted his initials, EVH. It's like, how can I have a title that gives a tip of the hat to him? In fact, I dedicate the album in the back of it, the liner notes, in memory of Eddie Van Halen. Something to that effect. But that's where the EVH is like, and Earth, we're here on Earth, victory. I'm about, accomplishing things and getting things done, being victorious, coming out a champ, a winner. And then heaven, I believe that there's more to life than just what we're here on Earth for, 90 years, 100 years at the most. So it kind of summed it up. But I'm for classical though, Brian, I'm not really a good finger picker in a traditional sense, like the Segovia and that stuff. But I love that style. I do have a nice classical guitar, but I haven't really used it in a long time. What it really gets me excited is to take those Bach pieces or Beethoven or Mozart or Paganini, just the notes. And this is good for every guitar player to try to don't look at tabs, but try to transcribe from just the treble clef. Wow. And then work out those violin licks on guitar. Figure out a good way to do it. Maybe you could sweep pick it, maybe string skip, maybe alternate pick, maybe legato, maybe finger tap it. We don't know because it's not written for guitar. It's written for violin or piano. So there's all these possibilities. It's like trying to figure out a treasure map. You get clues, and you might go down one trail for a while and figure out, that's the wrong trail. And then you got to backtrack and go down another.
Yeah. Sounds familiar. So, and anybody listening to this, I have to say, you have to check out Dave's, first of all, Earth, Victory, and Heaven, but also his cover of Pachelbel's Canon. That is really, really something special. And the video is available on YouTube. And also check out his Spotify artist page.
Yep. The Pachelbel one's on my Desert Storm CD.
Desert Storm, yep.
That's the album that came out I think in 2013.
So Dave, I want to be super respectful of your time. I can just be chatting with you all day, but I want to be respectful. And so tell me, you talked a lot about this actually, about your philosophy as a music educator. Do you have a specific philosophy, or do you feel like you summed it up when you talked about, having patience and listening and making sure that you're, not just providing your students the things that you love and that you want them to learn? So is there anything else that you would like to add to your philosophy as a music educator? Yeah,
just make the lessons enjoyable for the students. Regardless of if it's a kid, a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid, boy or girl, or an adult. I've got a few young students. Most of them are adult students. I've got females, I got males. No matter what, we got to make it fun for them. So just, find out what they like and give it to them. But also too, as you're obviously as an instructor, they're looking at you with a certain degree of respect and looking up to you for guidance and direction. So I give them what they want, but then I also start they need to work on their scales. So I start feeding them that, or branch out from that maybe and say, you know what, you like this rock and roll stuff, but you know where that really came from? The blues. Might be kind of cool to look at some blues. So I start steering them into that direction gently, because if they just absolutely hate the blues, I don't want to have them not like playing guitar. But most of the time, most students are like, yeah, I'll try that. And then once they start playing a few little turnarounds, oh man, this is cool. And to know that Chuck Berry, Johnny Be Good, Chuck's just a fast blues player. He just plays a lot faster with a straight rock and roll vibe. So they start seeing where it's all coming from. And the blues is generally 3 chords. A lot of classic rock is 3 chords. The same 3 chords. So that, Brian, let me, if you don't mind me just reading my answer or what I wrote down here. Yeah, like I said, I'll turn them on to the blues or maybe a little neo if they're like heavy metal. It's like that right next door is that neoclassical stuff. And that develops a lot of good techniques like the legato style, hammer-ons and pull-offs, the finger tapping, the sweep picking is applicable in that style.
And I'm going to give another plug. If you're interested in neoclassical study with Dave Celentano, it's there. He's the man that I learned a ton learning with you.
Thanks.
I'm looking forward. I'm going to Berklee College of Music right now, but as soon as I'm done, I'm going right back. Want to learn that style.
I do have a couple tapping courses I did with Guitar Tricks that are on their site, but you got to be a member to be part of Guitar Tricks. And also have a neoclassical course on TrueFire. But again, you got to be a member on TrueFire to access that stuff. And both sites are great. Right now I'm really, Guitar Tricks is a very broad site because not only do they do stylistic lessons, but they also they license songs. So they've got legal rights to do all these popular songs in rock, metal, blues, country, folk. So yeah. What was your next question, Brian?
Oh, so next question is, what does music have to offer kids?
That's a good one. It's especially now in the pandemic, but even not, several things. It keeps them busy, keeps them active, keeps their brains moving. It keeps all of our brains moving. But for kids in particular, I think it's good because our brain's a muscle too. And music's got so many things, just even if no matter what instrument you play, you still got to coordinate your fingers, your hands to work together. You've got to work with keeping things steady in time, so it's moving linearly. But then you also have to think about pitch, make sure you're in tune as you're playing linearly. And then also too, if you get a level of proficiency where you can keep it together, you play with another musician, then you've got this teamwork element going in. So it's like playing on a football team, or if you're a cheerleader, a female doing cheerleading, it's not just one cheerleader, it's a group. They have to be in sync together. They have to have their choreography down. So same with us musicians, if we play with another musician or a whole band, we all have to be playing together in time, in tune, for it to sound good or to look good. So having said all that, Brian, I think there's been studies that are done that students that play an instrument as they're going to school, elementary school, high school, tend to do better academically in their other academics. And especially in maths, because in music, when we're doing the rhythm part of it, if you're a drummer, it's all timing. It's all fractions. Quarter notes, whole notes are 4 beats. Half notes, 2 beats. Quarter notes are a quarter of the bar. Eighth notes. It's all subdivisions of the beat. So that's fractions is math. And then if you're playing a melodic instrument like guitar, piano, you're still having to keep all those beats, but then you also need to worry about playing in tune, playing your scales, the intervals, the chord building. That all has math involved because there's geometry in the way the chords are laid out. There's geometry in the intervals. Even if you're a singer, like we were talking before we started our interview here, just singing the pitches like a fifth, da 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 da. You got to be able to kind of hear it in your head. Even I'm not a good singer, and I don't sing at all in any of my stuff or in any bands. I let the ones that are good do that. Like Camille at 30 Day Singer. Let her take over.
She is amazing. So and
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
curious to know if you sing. Do you sing and play guitar? Like, 'cause I feel like when a lot of people who maybe aren't musicians, when they think about playing guitar, especially when parents sign their kids up, they usually have in mind strumming the basic open chords and singing songs. And I'm curious if that's something that you ever worked on.
No, not at all. I mean, I'll sing what I play sometimes, but not on purpose, or I'll sing to songs, in the car and stuff, but I am not a good singer and I don't even toot my horn at all in that direction. I'll let the pros be at it. Like on one of my most of my albums, in fact, all my albums are instrumentals, but on my first one, Guitar Stew, there's one song that has vocals, and that's a friend of mine, Lisa, who played in a band, several bands with in the past. She's a great singer. So when I had a blues song, I wanted some vocals to it, not just all guitar. I asked her, "Maybe you want to help me write some lyrics and you sing them?" And she came in all on board and did it, and it sounds great. It's called Sunny Day Blues.
I recently listened to that full album back to back, and I have to say, because you were talking about blues, I didn't want to interrupt you, but man, you were playing some killer blues on that album, dude. You sound like Albert King in like So Much Space. That's also an album that people should check out. And like, I had no idea that you could play the blues like that. It was incredible.
Thank you, Brian. I studied a lot, man. I transcribed a ton of stuff from Albert King, B.B. King, Freddie King, Mike Bloomfield, Peter Green, just some really classic guys. And of course, all the rock guys too, but those blues guys, I mean, that's where it all started from. And it's not all of them, but that's just a handful of popular names that we should, but it helps to transcribe the stuff and internalize the licks. So you can express yourself in that vocabulary. It doesn't sound anything like the neoclassical stuff, but you can't just step in there and just play a pentatonic scale and think you're going to sound like Albert King or B.B. King. There's a vocabulary of phrases that we need to learn to play like them, even though they're playing simple pentatonic licks generally. But we got to do our homework.
Well, it was obvious you did your homework, Dave, on that one. I highly recommend that people check out that album. So next question, how can parents integrate music education into the everyday lives of their kids?
That's another good one. If I was never for, my parents didn't play any instruments, and they didn't even really have music in the house at all. So that was kind of like as I look back, that was kind of like a bummer, but it obviously didn't stop me because I stuck with it. I got inspired by the rock bands and went on that direction. But some of my students, and you read this about some famous players, they grew up in a music, like Stevie Ray Vaughan, I believe his dad played guitar. They had a musical household where he would invite his friends over and they had jam sessions while Stevie and his brother Jimmy were like little kids. They'd hear the parents playing. I believe that's, if I'm getting my stories right, I believe it's something like that. And so if the parents can play an instrument, that always helps. That's great. And if not, just having music on in the house. Like I've got some of my young students, parents don't play instruments, but they play music in the house. So these kids, teenagers, the music these days is a lot different than the classic rock, we had in the 70s and 80s and even 90s, you know. So, but these students I got are wanting to do Metallica, and not like the new Metallica, but like the old stuff, like Fade to Black. It's like, how did you hear that? You're only like 13. Mom and dad, dad listens to it, or it's usually that's how they get turned on by the parents. So if the parents can either, if they play an instrument, that's great, that's really good. If not, if they play music in the house or in the car, that's a big help. um yeah, another thing too, that subliminally music will sink into the kids' minds and their ears and their hearts. And the other thing is turn the TV off. Shut that thing off. That's good to do for relaxing at the end of the day, but to have the TV on all day is, to me, it's kind of like a mind soak. It doesn't really help us. It's like when kids are doing their homework, they got to be in a quiet place. They can't have TV on. That's a distraction. But having music on, and even there's been studies done too that students that study while they're listening to Mozart in the background or classical music, music without words tends to be good to study by.
Great advice. I know when I picked up the guitar super late in life, and I needed to practice every bit that I could because I had absolutely no talent. I didn't even know that pitches went up and down for like 10 years. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. That's how little talent I had. But I did the math and I figured out I was watching 3 hours of TV before. I just switched it for guitar and boom, it's just like to take all that time and apply it to music. And I mean, it enriched my life in so many ways that the television never could. And now there's no comparison. I would never opt to turn on a TV than play a musical instrument today.
Exactly. Good, Brian. Good man.
So what skills should every young musician, regardless of their instrument, what should they be focusing on?
Trying to play at least one song all the way through. And it might not be the very first song that they work on, but it's when I work with students and that's our goal, is to be able to play a song all the way through. Sometimes we might have to go through 2, 3, 4, 5 songs to find one that they can play all the way through. Because sometimes they'll start a song and then into it at a certain point, they'll just realize it's either too hard or maybe, a couple of the chords might be beyond their scope at the time. But the beginning of it sounded pretty easy. So, you kind of go through, you've got 3 or 4 or 5 tunes, and then one of those will usually be a good candidate to be able to play all the way through. And then I try to get them to, let's put that on your goal list. It's good to have goals, short and long terms. Knock out, get that song, be able to play all the way through it. And, play it for me, the teacher. I want to hear it. And then sometimes if they're not too embarrassed, I'll bring in the parents if they're kids. Say, hey, mom, dad, come here, check out your son or daughter playing all the way through. Because that's good too, to be, it's kind of healthy to be put under the pressure a little bit. But some people don't like that. And if that's cool, if they're like that, I just don't force it. But they at least need to play it for me.
So Dave, this brings up an amazing point. So I've met a lot of actually really high level guitar players, like professional level guitar players, who don't know any songs outside of a band context all the way through. And then I find that the best players, though, have a huge repertoire. And I'm talking because I've been fortunate enough to meet some of the icons on guitar. And I'm curious to know, do you think that at some level that's what separates, like maybe like a professional rock guitar player who can improvise, really wonderful and play amazing rhythm, but maybe somebody who's like a top flight guitar player and that could just pick up the instrument and play like a full concert all the way through by themselves? You know what I mean?
Yeah, everyone's different, Brian. Some of my friends have this photographic memory where they know all, these songs all the way through. I usually have to practice hard to get the song down. And it's good to, playing in a band, especially if you're doing, even one set, like out here in Hollywood, usually the bands And at Los Angeles, the bands just play one set. That might be like 9, 10 songs. But when I was back east growing up in Maryland, a little south of where you grew up, um, we would play a club and be hired for the whole night. So we would have to play 4 sets. So we'd have to have like 40 songs memorized. And I think that's good for healthy. Yeah. But I haven't done that in a long time. So right now it's like the songs I do for guitar tricks, I get them down real good, memorize them. But once I've shot the video and move on to the next song, I couldn't play. Like I just did a couple Rush songs for them, Tom Sawyer and Limelight. I couldn't play Tom Sawyer from memory all the way through because I've already gone on to Limelight and then taken a break and done other stuff. And, you know, I haven't put in the time to memorize the stuff in that capacity. But I think that does separate some of the, you know, the different levels of players. But everybody's different too. You know, I mean, it just depends what you want to do with it. If I had, you know, if I had a desire to play in a band again and do 4 sets, I would just man up to it and memorize the songs. And there's always a lot of wiggle room too when you play live, where maybe the solo doesn't have to be exactly the same. And you know, if you've got enough theory under your fingers, Brian, you can improvise if you forget a spot. Just the thing is, keep the ball rolling. You know, if you just stop because you forgot a part, then everyone knows something happened. But if you keep going and just keep playing something in key, chances are it'll still sound good and no one will even notice.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating, Dave. I'm sitting here giggling because like my favorite part of playing the guitar is improvising. And so like I find, you know, what I really worked hard on is, you know, learning how to, you know, in the moment create guitar solos, you know, over chord progressions. And that's my favorite thing. But like memorizing a part that's actually been, you know, even if I wrote the part, just memorizing that is like, oh, it's a whole different ballgame. It's almost like a whole different set of skills. And once you actually got to play something by memory, it's totally, totally different. So I absolutely respect what you're saying. And it's one of the things that you had me doing. And I had to learn Pachelbel's canon. And that took me about 6 months of working with you before I learned that. And that was a challenging piece. I'm still, so you know, working on Fur Elise. So those students of mine who have taught Fur Elise too.
Oh, cool. That's right.
This is the man right here, Dave Celentano, dude. So Dave, I want to be super respectful. Is this super quickly? Are there any questions I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
I think we covered quite a bit. You know, the only other thing I didn't mention with the kids thing is metronome. Everybody, even the adults, we all need to do the metronome. And that's something I do with every single one of my students. I have these, you know, a lot of the lessons, the first thing I'll do is have them do some little warm-ups, maybe the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 chromatics, but never by itself with the metronome.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah, you're big into keeping track. I remember now. Yeah, that really helped me. So Dave, thank you so much. I'm going to ask that you stick around. I'm going to hit stop recording. And but it's been wonderful having you.
Just hey, thanks for having me too, Brian. I appreciate it, man. It's been an honor. You're a good guy.
Thank you so much, Dave.